Hello and welcome to our first edition of the Term 3 newsletter. It's been a big term and I'm sure you all realise that our HSC cohort graduates at the end of this term and we've got lots of events planned for that graduation ceremony. We also have Book Week in a few weeks' time and we'll also have what I consider to be the key event on our school calendar, the Saint Sophia Feast Day. However, today I want to talk to you about all things NAPLAN. You know my views on NAPLAN. I see it as an important bit of information about your kids' numeracy and literacy abilities. However, it is a snapshot of their abilities at one time of the year. It's not the complete package. What the NAPLAN needs to be supported by is other data sets, such as PAT-R, PAT-M, and PAT-E-Write, and that will give you an holistic view of your child's literacy and numeracy abilities. You may recall that on Tuesday, the 6th of August, I wrote to you to outline our school's strong performance in the current 2024 NAPLAN test. However, to unpack that strong performance, I have with me two of my experts. Chris Maguire, who is the leader of Innovation and Digital Learning. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
And I also have with me Tim Adams, who is the leader of Data Analytics and Student Growth. Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Chris and Tim, can you talk to our parent community about how NAPLAN has changed in recent times?
So NAPLAN has been around for many years and it is a tool to help schools and systems track how their students are developing with their literacy and numeracy skills. The main change to NAPLAN that's occurred, begun last year, was the introduction of new proficiency standards. So these standards needs additional support, developing, strong, and exceeding. And so these changes are what are used to report back to parents about how their child has progressed across their literacy and numeracy tests that they sat for NAPLAN online. One thing to note is because these new proficiency standards were introduced last year, the great news for us as a school is we can now have some comparisons with how our school was tracked last year in NAPLAN versus this year in NAPLAN because the new proficiency standards allow for that comparison. But for parents, when they want to make their comparisons with how their child has progressed, in 2026, when they get the next lot of NAPLAN results, then they can start to make some comparisons with how their child's tracking in comparison to the school and the state.
Yeah, well done.
Mm-hmm. And in the test itself, there's been some couple of changes too. So with the exception of Year 3 writing, it is now completely online, completely on device. So it's all sent off. That allows us to receive the results quicker than we had in the past. And another major change, which I think is also quite important, is all the tests are now, with the exception of writing again, are adaptive, which means each student faces different sets of questions to others. So the test itself adjusts based on how students are going. If they're getting a lot of questions right, the test will then adapt and give them maybe more difficult items to really test their performance levels.
That's unbelievable. Well done. Now, gentlemen, how has our school performed in NAPLAN in 2024?
Yeah, as Chris said, one of the main things that we can do as a school is compare our data from this year to last year and look at that trend. And comparing the distribution between those proficiency standards that Chris mentioned earlier, we saw that on the whole, our results are quite similar to last year, but majority of our students continue to still be in the strong performance descriptor, which is the second highest, which is quite good to see. And within the number in strong, most year groups and for most tests, there's been a slight increase in the number that are within the strong band too, which is a nice improvement to see as well. And out of all the tests, one of the main trends that we saw was that writing was our biggest improver. In fact, that we've had nearly across all our year groups that did writing, we've had about a 23% increase in the proportion that have shifted into the exceeding band, the performance level, the highest.
Wow. And isn't it coincidental that we have a focus on writing for our school improvement goal, and this data set would align nicely with that goal.
Yeah, and I would say yes, while we introduced our school improvement plan on literacy and writing this year, it still has been a focus that we've been working on over the years. And I think we're finally starting to see those fruits now with the shift of more students into exceeding.
Okay, so looking at how our school has compared, we have two metrics that we want to look at. So one is how our school has performed in comparison with the state mean, but also how our school has performed in comparison to last year's cohort and this year's cohort. So the main point to make clear is when we compare last year's Year 3 to this year's Year 3, we're talking about two different cohorts of students. So as expected, we have outperformed the state mean across all NAPLAN domains, which is great to see. But when we have a look at our Year 3 results, for example, we've noticed that there's been a slight decrease in the trend. So compared to 2023's Year 3 cohort and 2024's Year 3 cohort. And that trend down is actually consistent with the state mean as well. So you might, a key point to make with this Year 3 cohort is they're very unique in that these students began their kindergarten schooling during COVID, during home learning. So it's interesting to see how that's played out in our college, but across the state as well. So whilst we've outperformed the state mean, we have noticed a decrease in trend for Year 3 in those domains. Also Year 5 reading and Year 7 writing and reading. But as Tim mentioned, when we look at our Year 9 cohorts, but also Year 5 writing and Year 7 numeracy, compared to last year's cohorts, we've seen an upward trend. So we're above the state mean, but we're also trending upwards as well, which is great to see as a whole college, because that's what we want to see. We want to continue to trend upwards. Even if we do have different cohorts, that's always a great trajectory for our school, because it gives us an indicator around what we're doing well, but also what are some areas that we can begin to focus on. So if we have trend down in any of these domains, the next question we like to ask is, well, what are the areas of that test that we've trended downwards that we can start to focus on and make decisions around improving the professional learning or improving the learning opportunities for students to really kind of highlight where those areas of literacy and numeracy are, but what are the next steps to improve?
And that's a good segue for me to ask you, well, what are our next steps?
So our next steps are, as you mentioned at the start of this interview, this is one day in March, how our NAPLAN results. But it's important that we take into account the multiple standardised testing that we have coming up. So for example, in Term 4, we have our PAT R and PAT M tests, so PAT reading and mathematics tests. And what that does is it gives us the latest data set, because from from March till now, I mean, that's 3 months of growth that our students would have experienced. So we want to make sure we've got the latest data sets, because if we have the latest data sets, we can make the most informed decisions about what are our next steps for our professional learning, what are our next steps for student learning to improve that teaching and learning experience.
Chris and Tim, thank you. It's been an eye-opener, to say the least. Folks, you can see we're certainly in good hands.
Hi everyone, this is Clarissa, and today we're going to unpack some fantastic things she's been doing on the netball field and how she's been balancing school with playing netball, and unpack some of the achievements that she's made as an umpire. So Clarissa, let's get straight into it. As a netball umpire, where are you at? What are some things that you've kind of achieved in the last couple of months that you're really proud of?
Well, I'm currently at my National B accreditation, and a few weeks ago I was just at Gold Coast, where I was at the School Sport Australia Games, and was there for a week, and by the end of the week I was awarded the grand final match between New South Wales and Queensland. Last week I was also at the PWSA Netball Championships, and from there was selected to go umpire at the Under-12s National Championships.
Very good. And where will those national championships that you've been selected for, where are they going to be, and when is that going to be?
So the Under-12s will be at Melbourne, and it'll be on the 7th to the 13th of September.
Very good. So it sounds like, you know, you're at a pretty high level. It's involving some interstate travel, which is fantastic. I believe you may have been, involved in, some netball or netball umpiring before a New South Wales Swifts game. Is that correct?
Yep. So last year I was asked to go and umpire the the showcase game before the Swifts, where I got a chance to umpire on the actual home game of home court of the Swifts.
Cool. How did you get involved? So we know where you're at now. I'm wondering how you got involved in netball umpiring and at what age?
Well, when I was 13, all of my friends said that they wanted to start, and then I said I'll start along with them, then eventually got picked up by my now mentor and encouraged by a lot of people at my association to go through the pathway.
Yeah. And why do you like it? Why do you like netball umpiring?
Well, I just really like the sport. I've loved it ever since I was a little kid, and just love it.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to put you on the spot. This is a little bit difficult, but can you think of 2 or 3 skills that you think are really necessary to be an umpire at kind of such an elite level?
I think definitely reaction time, along with fitness, but reaction time, because a lot of players always tend to ask what's going on if it's not sort of right at the infringement, but and then fitness as well, depending on which game you're umpiring.
Yeah, cool. Clarissa, you're doing an awesome job. Like I said, you're in year 11, you're juggling all of your studies, you're playing netball, you've got all this travel, all these competitions. Credit to you. I encourage our community to keep an eye out for you, and I'm sure we'll see you on the TV one day. You should be very proud.
Thank you.
Last week, we celebrated the Feast of the Assumption. And today, I'm with Dr. Chris Hayman, our leader of Formation and Mission. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Chris, can you just unpack with our parent community, why is the Feast of the Assumption so important?
So, Mark, the Feast of the Assumption is very important. It's a holy day of obligation in the Catholic Church, which means we all practicing Catholics, all Catholics should go to Mass. And it's important, it's all about Mary, the end of her earthly life, and when she's taken up into heaven, body and soul. And that's significant because unlike Jesus, who ascended into heaven, he's also God, so he goes to heaven. Mary is not God, Mary is a person, which is a very important person, and due to her faith and due to her close relationship with her son, she's taken up into heaven at the end of her earthly life. And that's significant for us as Catholics because it reminds us that there is a resurrection. There's a resurrection of our body, that we're not just spirit, but our body and spirit are resurrected at the end of time. And Mary is a role model for us, and she also intercedes for us. She has a very special relationship with her son, and she can pray for us, and we can pray with her, and we can have the hope of the resurrection every day in our lives.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you, Chris.